Afternoon, everybody. Wardrobe malfunction here. Hold on. There we go. There we are. Good afternoon, everybody. So this retreat is definitely packing a punch. Folks are settled in. You would almost think, at least from my perspective, that this is day 4 for some folks. There's a quality of mind that usually takes some time to get to. Of course, it does. But also, I think it speaks in some way to the consistency of practice in this space and the consistency of practice in the Sangha. So that, yes, it is our own individual requirement to step in and do the work. No one can do this for you. And there is wind in the sails. The Dharma wind flows, and it helps all of us along. So we're all benefited by the practice of the ancestors, by the practice of the woods and the wind and the moon and the sun, and very much by each other. Many here will know that we are together sitting at the feet of the Lankavatara Sutra, this Ango. And as I've been spending time with the sutra in this particular context and way, it's amazing to me how much is unfolding there, how much there is to appreciate, and how useful the sutra actually is. So I invite you to listen not from the perspective of a scholar or an academic or a historian, but rather from the seat of practice. Let's listen together and see what does this teaching that really is the center of Chan and Zen practice, what does it have to say to those of us who scramble the egg of our lives such that we can actually set the time aside to do a session? Chapter 5, the mind system. Then Mahamati said to the Blessed One, "Pray, tell us, Blessed One, what is meant by the mind, by citta?" You will have heard the refrain over and over that there is nothing but what is seen of mind. So the question comes up, what's mind? Just pause for a moment. What do you think you might say? How might you respond? Okay, it's nothing but what is seen of mind itself. What is mind? The Sanskrit is citta, bodhicitta, the mind of awakening. But what is mind itself? Well, the Buddha responded this way. The Blessed One replied, "All things of this world, be they seemingly good or bad, faulty or faultless, effect-producing or not effect-producing, receptive or non-receptive, all the things may be divided into 2 classes, evil outflowings and the non-outflowing good. The 5 grasping elements that make up the aggregates of personality, namely form, sensation, perception, discrimination, and consciousness, and that are imagined to be good and bad, have their rise in the habit energy of the mind system. They are the evil outflowings of life. The spiritual attainments and joys of the samadhis and the fruitage of the samapatis that come to the wise through their self-realization of noble wisdom, and that culminate in their return and their participation in the relations of the triple world. These are called the non-outflowing good. The mind system, which is the source of the evil outflowings, consists of the 5 sense organs and their accompanying sense minds, all of which are unified in the discriminating mind. There is an unending succession of sense concepts flowing into this discriminating or thinking mind, which combines them and discriminates them and passes judgment upon them as to their goodness or badness. Then follows aversion to or desire for them, an attachment, an action. Thus, the entire system moves on continuously and closely bound together, but it fails to see and understand that what it sees and discriminates and grasps is only a manifestation of its own activity and has no other basis. And so the mind goes on erroneously perceiving and discriminating differences of forms and qualities, not remaining still, even for a minute. There's a lot there. First of all, evil and good. These are sticky words, and I implore you not to be stuck on them. Keep it very simple. Evil, in our tradition, simply means anything that causes suffering. If it's causing anguish and suffering, if it's causing the sum total of suffering for yourself, others, the world to be increased, we'll call that evil. On the contrary, anything that you do that reduces suffering or anguish for yourself and others in the world, this is good. There is no ontological entity out there trying to zap you. You do that just fine yourself. So the Buddha replies to this question, what is mind? He says there are two ways of thinking of this to see it. Now understand that everything in these sutras, everything the Buddha taught, anything any Zen master or other master ever said is simply a skillful means. Hopefully it's a skillful means. So don't clench too tight. Simply let the effect of what these words, given that these are not the language they were spoken in or written down in, but some sense of what these words might bring to your awareness, the direction in which these fingers of words point us. Scholars will spend their lives piercing and debating things that have very little relevance to us as actual practitioners of the Dharma. So listen from the heart. The Buddha says there's basically two things that is mind. There's stuff that hurts, and there's stuff that helps. What is it that hurts? All the things of this world. The bird that insists on entering the zendo. The tree that once was a tree that now is this floor. The sky, the wind, you. All the things of this world can be seen in two ways. Evil outflowings and non-outflowing good. Why these words? Why outflowing? What the hell is that? Listen. The 5 grasping elements that make up the aggregates of what you think is you. Form, sensation, perception, discrimination, and consciousness. That's a familiar set, isn't it? That's in the Heart Sutra. These 5 grasping elements that make up the aggregates of personality, form, sensation, ouch, perception, why did I, discrimination, that was dumb, consciousness, ouch, I hurt myself, that are imagined to be good and bad have their rise in the habit energy of the mind system. When the Buddha taught mind, he didn't just speak of it in terms of a brain with, lobes and regions and neurons. That's all completely true. But the Buddha taught specifically about mind system. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body. We could say brain. And that each of these organs of perception have an object of perception, and that creates a consciousness. And what the Buddha is saying here in very short form is that this consciousness is filled with grasping and clinging. So this outflowing business has to do with the eye constantly looking to see, and the ear wanting to hear, and the body wanting to feel, and the tongue needing to taste, and on and on. This habit energy of the mind system. This stuff doesn't just come from no place. Karma is a serious thing. Karmic seeds, right? Things ripen, and then they sprout up. And that, when perceived and acted on, becomes yet another seed. And the whole roller coaster just keeps spinning, man. So this habit energy pattern is something that's very important. And the koan system will insist that you pay attention to this. It can be very vexing when beginning training, these koans say, well, this is stupid. What is this? I thought this was going to be cool. Why are we talking about this thing? Pay particular attention to those times. It's addressing this habit energy systems of the mind. Dear one, you have deeply conditioned patterns of mind. And if you aren't really held up to them, you'll never notice them. You won't even consider them to be something worth noticing. And yet it's required. It's absolutely required. And as the training develops and unfolds, it becomes more and more clear that this something is getting between ourselves and ourselves. The true intimacy of our life is somehow out of reach of ourselves, which is bizarre and fixable, workable. They have their rise in the habit energy of the mind system. Consider all the random thoughts you've had over the day. Where did they come from? Why those thoughts and not others? Why are your thoughts different from the person sitting next to you? Are they? Habit energy patterns. This is why training is very important, because we begin to interrupt the unconsciously accepted, the uncritically evaluated habit energy patterns deep within the body, deep within the mind, deep within the heart. These things are beyond the reach of your ordinary everyday consciousness, even though your everyday mind expresses it. But to realize them, to liberate them, requires something else. The spiritual attainments, the joys of samadhis, and the fruitage of the samapadis that come to the wise through their self-realization of noble wisdom. Self-realization of noble wisdom is another way of saying awakening to your true self, realizing thusness, clear, light, empty bliss body. I mean, pick your phrase, Buddha nature, it doesn't matter much. Although if you stick to one, I'll refute you with another. Because after all, there's just names. But this self-realization of true selfness, that is noble wisdom, and that culminates, this is interesting, in their return. Track this. The self-realization of noble wisdom, of the realization of Buddhahood, culminates in their return in participation in the triple world. Now, the triple world, this is form, formlessness, and desire. Well, wait, isn't desire supposed to be a bad thing? Aren't we supposed to be all Vulcan about everything and have no pure logic dictates? Or isn't clinging the issue here? Aren't we supposed to have no attachments to anything? The culmination of noble realization, wisdom, is your return. Hi, I'm back. It's your return and participation. Participation, consciously playing in a self-fulfilling and other-fulfilling samadhi in the realm of form and formlessness and desire. Buddhahood involves participating in desire. You see, it's not that because the skin wants to feel things, the skin's bad, you should burn it all so that you don't sense anything anymore. No, there's nothing impure if you get down to it. But realizing it is what's required. You have to realize the Buddha nature of everything, including desire, including form, including formlessness. And that's why in the 10th ox herding picture, there's this person with unkempt, a wine sack in the village, dirty, playing with the kids, enlightening everyone they see. It's because they've returned and they are participating, consciously participating in relations of form and formlessness and desire for the benefit of all beings throughout space and time, not just for themselves to have a 10% happier day. In my own religious and spiritual training as a young person, there was a hard line between the pure and the impure, the right and the wrong, the holy and the sinful. And these lines were places for battle. And, there's something about it that seems kind of right in a kind of a way, but be careful. Do not import those kinds of impressions onto the Buddha's words or onto your own experience. If you let your mind rest naturally in its native state, you'll see beyond all that. And this is why moral and ethical training is absolutely necessary before actually getting into wisdom training. Because a little bit of wisdom training with no character and no virtue and no development of the basics is actually not good for you. There are too many examples of folks that have a little bit of insight or maybe some substantial insight, and yet their lives are not workable. There's a wake of pain behind them. This is not necessary, and this is not acceptable. It's interesting, I was looking at some other teachings expressing the same truth. Master Hongren, 7th century, the 5th ancestor from Bodhidharma. He said it this way: the basic essence of cultivating enlightenment should be discerned. It is the inherently complete and pure mind in which there is no false discrimination. And body and mind are fundamentally pure, unborn, and undying. This is the true teacher. This is better than invoking the Buddhas of the 10 directions. And that's why we say there are no teachers in Zen. How do we know that the inherent mind is fundamentally pure? According to the 10 stages of scripture, there is an indestructible Buddha nature, prajna, paramita, tathagata garbha, Buddha nature, thusness, and that is in the bodies of living things like the orb of the sun, its body luminous, round and full, vast and boundless. But because it's covered by the dark clouds of the 5 clusters, the dark clouds of the 5 clusters sounds like a punk band. The dark clouds of the 5 clusters, it cannot shine like a lamp hidden inside a pitcher. When there is clouds and fog everywhere, the world is dark, but does that mean that the sun itself is decomposed? Why is there no light? The light is never destroyed, it's just enshrouded by clouds and fog. These 5 clusters, the dark clouds of the 5 clusters, in the Lankavatara Sutra we just read, the 5 grasping elements that make up the aggregates of personality, form, sensation, perception, discrimination, consciousness. Same things. Don't get hung up as the 5, dark clouds of the 5 clusters, something different from the 5 grasping elements, put it on a spreadsheet. Remember, dear one, they're all gestures, pointing to something that you can experience, the experiencing of which makes all the difference. Even more so, integrating it, living with it, as it. The pure mind, Hongren continues, of all living beings is like this, merely covered up by the dark clouds of obsession with objects. Object of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Obsession, here's a nice little list if you want one. Obsession, clinging, arbitrary thoughts. Has anyone been suffering arbitrary thoughts today? Arbitrary thoughts, psychological afflictions, a show of hands perhaps, right? And views and opinions. If you have the view of yourself as having views, please raise a hand. There it is. Pretty good list for a 7th century dude, right? Our dark clouds of obsession with objects, which can be attraction or repulsion, by the way, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. It's still obsession, addiction. Obsession with objects, arbitrary thoughts, squirrel, psychological afflictions, in views and opinions. Well, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to have right view? Aren't my opinions supposed to be, in alignment with the great Roshii? If you can just keep the mind still so that errant thought does not rise, the reality of nirvana will naturally appear. It's right there, guys. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to muster anything different. You don't have to cut some chunk of yourself off and sacrifice it or nothing. But you do have to trust yourself. You have to literally trust your body. And you can't do this just by thinking about it. It is a cellular process. You've got to get your hara real. You must get your body connected to itself. You may think, of course my body's connected to itself. No, it's not. Your mind's here, your heart's over there, your guts are someplace you can't even tell. You haven't noticed your feet in a decade. Sesshin is physical, right? Life is physical. The reality of nirvana will naturally appear. Original purity is all there is. And that includes form, sensation, perception, discrimination, consciousness, once you see it. The mind system, which is the source, the Lankavatara continues of evil outflowings, consists of the sense organs and their sense minds, all of which are unified in discriminating mind, mano vijnana. This is basically eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, brain, you could say, which the object of brain thinks of thoughts, and then that kind of culminates in a sense of me. I'm the one thinking these things. I'm the one deciding and choosing and afflicted or winning. There is an unending succession of sense concepts flowing into this discriminating thinking mind, even when you're sleeping. Discriminates them, passes judgments on them as to goodness or badness. This is why it's absolutely critical that you do not judge your own practice. Just practice your practice. If you're spending time evaluating your practice while you're practicing, you're not, that's a little loop. And don't worry about that. I mean, you can outsource that to the teachers. You don't have to worry about that. You really don't. It doesn't help. I said in the beginning comments, drop the agitation and the turbulations of worldly life, such as it is. Also, please drop your hopes and your plans and your agenda and everything you're going to get. The quicker you can drop all that stuff and stop obsessing with them, the easier it's going to be to just wake up to yourself. And then sure, you can return and play with thoughts about what you'd like to do. I have stuff I'd like to do. That's fine. Do you see? Then follows aversion to or desire for them and attachment and action. Thoughts generate karma, words generate karma, actions generate karma. These karmic seeds don't just evaporate. It all matters. I was doing kinhin, and I noticed that the incense table here was not really where it's supposed to be. It was off to the side a little bit. And that cushion is supposed to be there, not over here. And that over here, the haku box was not actually on the table. So is that just being obsessive? Maybe, but I don't think so. I'm feeling like the Dharma is about to be proclaimed. Let's have everything clean. And my intuition showed this. And so, straighten it up. Very different from why, who's not seeing this, and who's not paying attention, and how could anyone expect me to give a talk with, how can I function under such conditions? Or whatever other drama. When the milk gets spilled, clean it up. Does it make sense? Participating in the triple world. Form. Formlessness. How I'd like it to be. Thus, the entire system moves on continuously, closely bound together. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, brain, sense of self, and storehouse consciousness, closely bounded together, moving along as a system, the Buddha tries to put words to it for us. But it fails to see and understand that what it sees and discriminates and grasps is only a manifestation of its own activity. It's only a manifestation of your own activity and has no other basis. When you really see that, it's deeply liberating and a little scary because you're responsible then. Yeah. You're no victim. And then stuff happens, I understand. But from the ultimate perspective, from the perspective of you realizing your Buddhahood, you must put these ideas aside. Realize your innate purity, regardless, and including everything that happened. I'm not pretending it didn't happen, I understand. We've all done dumb stuff. We've all been on the wrong end of difficult situations, horrible situations. Nonetheless, in fact, all the more. And so the mind goes on erroneously perceiving and discriminating differences of forms and qualities and good and bad and pure and impure and on, not remaining still for even 1 minute. There's a lot of stillness at session. It's a good thing. Some places of training, they don't allow people to come and go. And although we don't do that, I understand why that choice is made. For you, for me, you're here now, okay? So take yourself seriously and drop yourself altogether. Let yourself really drop in to this moment. And set it all aside and just let your pure, true nature simply express. Not just thinking Buddhist-y thoughts about it or trying to generate Buddhist-y feelings, whatever that would be. Just rest, but stay awake. Pay attention, but don't strain. And really watch the activity of your mind and your heart and your hara. Let yourself be still for more than just a minute. Samadhi, some ask, why? Why bother with samadhi? After all, as soon as the retreat's over and I look at my phone, what about that beautiful samadhi? I tell you what, when you give yourself the gift of really letting yourself sit deeply, all that mind system of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, thinking, sense of self, and storehouse consciousness, it brings ease to all the achy joints of those minds. They can relax. They can let go of their white knuckle grip on trying to make sure that they're there. It's not sufficient to just hang out in samadhi, but if you don't know what that is, you need it. Because the samadhi gives you the gateway into prajna. Prajna is what allows us to realize noble wisdom, which doesn't depend on samadhi at all. But to see it, to realize it, to integrate it, well, we need stillness. So for the sake of all beings throughout space and time, may we maintain internal and external silence, practice stillness, even as we move about and do things. May it be so.